Hello? Hello?
Hello, who's on the phone?
Hi, this is Tony Brown.
Oh, first-time caller, long-time listener?
Tell him what he won.
Yeah, right.
What's the phrase?
I'm happy to join this evening. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Mr. Ryer, are you the other phone call?
I sure am.
Excellent. Well, thank you. We'll get started here in a second, but we want to welcome you to WGLB, Port Washington's premier lakeshore radio station. Only townies would know that one. Okay, 6 bells. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting, May 18th, 2023. Roll call, all commissioners are present. Mr. Ryer is joining us by phone. Looking for an approval of the minutes from our previous meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved in second. Any questions or concerns about the minutes? All right, seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Hi.
Delay. All right. Next is public comments. Public comments are welcome from the community. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. If you need more time, please contact myself to be placed potentially on the Planning Commission agenda or your topic to be placed on the agenda. Are there any public comments at this time?
Wayne Crucial, 985 Niagara Court. I just want to make a comment about the discussions you're going to have tonight about the Inventors Pub, and just want to mention that I do represent tourism as the executive director, and I don't have any comment in terms of the actual design, but just I want to make the point that this is, to me at least, and I think to the tourism group as a whole, is an important building that we need in town, that we need event space, and it will help in bringing more people to town. So I just wanted to make sure that the commission understood that we feel it's important.
Thank you, Wayne. Other public comments? Again, please state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Ruth Clunan. I live at 324 North Lake Street. My husband and I purchased the property December 30th of last year, so we're new residents. I'm actually a little confused. I'm not sure if the topic that I wanted to address is on the agenda for this evening. I thought it was. We wanted to make a comment about the Port Washington water plant expansion project. We know that's a really vital, important project. Obviously, our water is crucial, and that plant it has necessary and needed updates to be done. In particular, my husband and I made some presentations. The public utility was very gracious to have some additional comment period for us, for many residents that are new, since the earlier meetings were last August and we weren't here then. In particular, there is a second story element of that expansion project that does impact a great number of views of homeowners at both Newport Shores and Lighthouse condominiums. We did a little bit of an assessment to determine that that impact maybe is around 24 households, 24 families. And we do believe that there is some possible consideration towards maybe reducing or moving that second story expansion project. The second story sounds like it comes into play because of noise mitigation for the generator, which we understand to be running only for a short period of time. And then in emergencies. And in an emergency, we're also going to have generators running at both Newport Shores and Lighthouse condominiums. We did a little bit of an assessment that said if we move that a little bit to the west or even reduce it, we would possibly save a good deal of view from Lighthouse condominiums and Newport Shores. So we do appreciate the teams that allowed us to present, and we just wanted to reiterate that we love being in Port Washington. We think the views are great. Hope we can preserve some of those views. We know that building's going to be there a long time. The maintenance record of the public utility team proves that that facility is going to be there for a while. So anything we can do now to help mitigate the impacts of those on the neighboring residents would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Other public comments? Other public comments? All right. Other public comments? 3 times? All right. We're going to move into the agenda then. We're going to move on to item number 4, minor review and amended building design. Consideration and possible action on a proposed exterior revision to the Inventors Brew Pub development, 305 East Washington. TBF Development LLC and Adam Drager are the applicants. The issue and the project background is the current BSOP is being asked to be adjusted in order for the owner and the project to continue within their budget. The proposed design changes from April 20th, 23 proposal, I'm going to have Mr. Harris go through, but the staff recommends, based upon the different pre-meetings and conversations, the staff recommends approval subject to any additional commission conversations or requirements this evening. Mr. Harris.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as you noted, what I'm going to do here is just simply go through the submitted items coming out of that April Plan Commission meeting, and it'll essentially be a comparison between the previous proposal and what's proposed now. And I'll go through that, and when I'm finished, I'll just hand it over to Adam Drager for questions and comments and discussion. So with that, I will.
And with that, Mr. Harris, tonight, what I'd like to do is, I know Mr. Drager's here, and he came into town to make sure to be at this meeting, but what I'd like to do is, once you're done with your presentation covering all the issues, because we have had this conversation, that we're just going to have Mr. Drager answer questions for us tonight. If that's okay. All right, excellent.
So to lead off, this was the, kind of the first lead rendering from last month's proposal, and that was showing a lot of the proposed changes from that original 22 version. Speaking of, here is the Washington Street or north face rendering of that 2022 facade. And then in response, here is the most current rendering of that North or Washington Street facade. You can see the differences between last month and this month was that the event hall second-story windows are larger and the proportions are larger. The east half of the building, the second floor office windows, are wider, and there is extra vertical panes on those ground floor event space windows for more verticality. And again, just going back real quick, this was last month, and then this is the current rendering. I also might add that the fiber cement panels between the windows that were shown in April have been removed. The other item is just showing there is landscape planners, and that, of course, that would be subject to just city approvals, given it would be in sidewalks. Moving along, these are the corresponding elevations for that Washington Street face. The image on the top is from the 22 approved version, and then on the bottom, we're seeing what's presented now. And again, you can see the windows are larger, not as large as the 22 version, but you can tell even from that April rendering. Moving along, this is the west elevation, April and May, no change. Again, this is the roof plan showing the mechanicals along with the grain silo and the roof hatch. The whites are planned, and then the yellow, I believe, are future. And again, you can see the north and south designation to get your orientation. Going to the south face, this is the 2022 version. And then here is the current version with the east face as well. So just back up real quick. This is south face. Again, it's showing the different. The roof pitch has a pitch versus the more pitched and flat roof we saw last year. Again, the windows are smaller than 22. And again, the fiber cement panels that we saw last month have been put back and with the tongue and groove that we saw in '22. Again, the rendering and the printing is a little different, but again, those materials you see on the second floor office is the cedar siding. So it's there and it's back here. And again, corresponding elevations, April and May. April had those more grid muntins on the second floor office windows. Again, in May, those are back to mimicking more of that 2022 version. And the event space, no changes from last month. And then again, here are the east elevations. Again, April last month on the bottom, and then this meeting, the elevations are on the top here. And so that is kind of what's in your packet, and it's just a comparison of the submittals. And then I'll just hand it over to Adam at this point.
What questions do commissioners have for Mr. Harris or Mr. Drager? I'll just start up by saying that I appreciate the significant add backs from the original BSOP and how that's more reflective. Again, like I personally said, I like the roof elevation dropping. I think that's a little better for the neighbors to the north and the community for those views. So I'm great. I mean, I know that's cost savings, but I think that's a positive, unforeseen consequence of that shift, as well as the windows, bringing back on the north side of the building, some of the architectural features that helped to shift that. So I'm grateful for that, and I'm happy that you guys were able to find efficiencies in other ways with materials. So I do appreciate that.
I apologize that I was not at the last one to present. I had other family commitments. And but I was listening. I was on the call last time and took notes, and we tried to incorporate all of the commissioners' comments. And if one of your suggestions did not make it in, kind of apologize. But we tried to incorporate as much as a compromise as we could. So.
Any questions? Yeah, Mr. Strom.
Yeah, just kind of going to Bob's comment with on the south and east with just a single vertical line on the windows. Can we get the 4 panes?
That's, I mean,
I'm assuming the windows don't open.
If it's just one person's thing, I mean, if all of the other commissioners think there was a good idea, yes, we could do that still. We haven't ordered the windows yet. It's just a button. But I don't want to change the building just because one person wants it and another person wants one. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So we're presenting this building as it is, and we would hope to just get an approval of it. But if you kind of get some head nods from all the rest of the commissioners, and if they all would want that, it's possible.
And then the other thing in the east side, that lower level space, I don't know, Bob, if you can put this one up.
That is the overhang patio.
Well, I guess I'd like bigger windows there also.
No.
You're talking about these windows here.
Yes.
And those windows there. Okay.
Well, other than that, I think it's a substantial
Yeah,
improvement.
I was a little disappointed with they must have used a different renderer because it went from cedar back to cedar again. We put the exact same material back in, but as you can see from the 2022 to 2023, the renderings don't reflect that texture.
Adam, you accidentally turned, Adam?
That shows kind of a weathered.
Adam, you accidentally turned your microphone off. Thank you.
Sorry about that. This one right here from 2022 is showing sort of must be the weathered version. It's more gray. And then the one at 2023 is probably closer to what it'll look like when it's first installed, and it'll slowly weather to that weathered gray.
So that infill between the windows is the same?
It's identical as what we were approved from 2022, yeah. It just doesn't look like that in the renderings, and I'm kind of disappointed.
We've just got better projectors since then. That's why
That's what.
yeah, it's 1081 HD.
That's okay. That's why it looks better.
Yeah.
I do
questions?
like the rendering of the patina of it looks more like real metal in this one. In the original rendering, it looked kind of like a blobby orange. I mean, we told you what it was. It's like Core 10 type material, like that right there. It looks kind of blobby and doesn't look like metal to me. So I do really like the new rendering. That this looks, if you look at it really close, that looks like patinaed metal, in my opinion. So I am very pleased with that part.
Other inquiries?
So I would say, especially the Washington Street side, the north side, much better. It feels a little bit more inviting to a pedestrian. I know there's some things you'll have to work out with the city as far as planters and things like that. But it does make a difference to have something like that as well. The fact that you put back the canopy that went from the door and then down towards the east makes a lot of sense. I would also concur with Roger that I think you need the horizontal mullion on the east and the south side.
The what?
The mullion, the horizontal piece here.
Mutton.
Mullion. Essentially, so you've got kind of a square and then you got 4 squares.
You guys are talking architect. Okay. The windows need to look like this.
Yeah, what he said. So I think I think that actually would help. And I would also agree that the windows on that first level in that corner, they need to match the windows that are on the north side as well. The height and the spacing, I think that would make a big difference.
So those are just interior design features of the actual physical window, correct? That's not it's just how they're ordered?
Yeah, it would just go all the way up,
Sure.
you know. So, yeah, I mean, those things are
It's not a $1 million
minor.
addition.
No.
Right, okay.
No.
The height is right now is sort of restricted by the fact that we're waiting for a second floor tenant, which we don't know who it may or may not be. If they like the gabled look, they could keep it and it'd be fine. But if they ever needed to put a drop ceiling in there, this is the highest the window can go if they want to add a drop ceiling.
Well, I'm talking on the first floor, not
Could
on
you
the
go
first
back?
floor.
Could you
Yeah.
go to
Oh,
the
you're
view
talking
from
about
the-
the same thing that Roger
those
said.
3.
Okay.
Yeah,
I understand.
those should match what's on the.
That is inconsequential. Yeah.
Yeah. Other than that,
Okay.
I don't.
No.
Yeah, and if they like the gable on the second, however, I think that is okay. I think adding that horizontal mullion makes sense.
Mutton.
Other questions?
I would concur with Commissioner Ehrlich and Commissioner Strom on the second floor east elevation and south elevation windows. And I think the big part when we look at the actual two-dimensional elevations, excuse me, the proportions of those windows on the second floor, east side and south side, they're very similar to what is over the events hall. It's a very more square proportion, and I think that center mullion going horizontally wants to mimic that, as opposed to that form is different than what is along the Washington Street side, which is much more rectangular and in a vertical
Correct.
fashion.
Yeah.
So I think just for cohesion, that would make that look better. I also agree on the east side, first floor, northeast corner, that those windows too do want to mimic what's wrapped around the corner on the northeast side by the Washington Street side. So I would agree with both of those suggestions on that.
But no required muttons in those.
No, I think those just being vertical.
Those are three separate windows, so no extra dividers.
No.
I don't think so.
But on the second floor, that is the desire, is to have those
Yes,
horizontal mullions?
mullions.
Mullions.
Mutton.
Now you're
Mullions?
just-
I was afraid I was going to say minions. This is like, what was the other one, Alderman Benning? Leache? Leaking dumpsters? Mr. Knope, keep us going, please.
Yes. Adam, this is not a thing for you. It's more of a question for Bob and a lead-in to the next agenda item. In going through the urban design guidelines that we are to be reviewing and considering, there's a little bit of conflict, I would say, relative to some of the materiality that's being called out in our downtown plan and the urban design guidelines than what's here. I mean, there's conformity, which is great, but there's also some other matters that, especially the corrugated metal, that it's pretty explicitly called out as not being desirable in here. I guess, can you comment to that?
If it says the corrugated metal, I think it's, the design guidelines are talking literally about like the thinner, the corrugated metal that we see, say, on Quonset huts or that type of material. This is, obviously a higher grade.
Well, I think it still is corrugated and weathering, so it'll look like a weathered,
I guess I just want to interject here.
yeah.
This was in motion before that downtown
it.
plan was done, so like, this is egg, that's chicken.
got it.
We're gonna let it go if that's okay.
Okay,
I understand it, but it would be unfair to ask them to go with new designs.
understood, and that's why I said it wasn't really an Adam thing, it's a Bob thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna make a motion then to accept the staff recommended approval, subject to the window height on the east side of the building matching the rest of the building and horizontal mullions being installed or included in the upstairs design of the building.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Are there any questions or concerns on the motion?
Who made the second?
Alderman Newmeyer. Mr. Ryer, anything to add while on the phone?
I have nothing to add. I just wanted to compliment them on the revisions that they made and the effort they put into getting it much more close to the original plan.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
I abstain.
And abstentions. Motion passes. Mr. Drager, tap that hazy IPA. All right, and thank you for making the time. All right, moving on to the next agenda item, Port Washington Downtown and Lakefront Plan, consideration and possible action on a Plan Commission Resolution 2023-1 relating to the approval of the City of Port Washington Downtown and Lakefront Plan. The City of Port Washington is the applicant for this. Mr. Harris, I'm going to turn it over to you because I don't want to read all those different pieces. Steal your thunder.
All right, thank you.
But if I might comment, the approval of this, remember, for community, that while it's a downtown and lakefront plan, this is not a literal plan. This is an aspirational piece, putting in place guidelines for design, et cetera. There's been a lot of questions that have been raised in the community, like, how come this is coming? Where's this coming from? Why is this? This is a vision document to help guide us strategically, not literally. Accurate?
Accurate, and you'll see a little bit more detail to those points in my presentation, which, I will just kick this off now.
The last time, if I can just remind the commission, the last time Mr. Harris did one of these things, we learned about snout houses. So we're very excited to hear what we're going to learn next.
No snout houses in this plan, or mention of it. Okay, thank you. So this is a proposed downtown and lakefront plan. This was kicked off in 2022. And this has been a little bit over a year-long process, and hopefully it is culminating in June with an approval by the council as just a part of the comprehensive plan. But let me give you just everyone both the background and then the summary of the plan itself. So this is not the first downtown plan that the city has seen. The first one that was dedicated to the downtown was back in 1962. There've been a couple others. I have just featured a version of 1977, which focused on the harbor and the harbor improvement plan, and also a plan amendment in 1998 that discussed building heights. And, like these plans, there's some good ideas and vision, others not so much. For example, in the 1962 plan, it was kind of a product of its time as the interstate highway system was going in, and cities were looking to how can we compete with the newly expanded suburbs and free ample parking and whatnot. And so, perhaps, removing much of what's between Pier and Jackson Street for parking, perhaps in hindsight, that was not a good idea. But this was actually a first city plan, that showed a marina. It was also a city plan that showed some nice urban design with Washington Street and kind of a plaza-like street, and it promoted a landscaped Franklin Avenue for strolling and shopping. West of Wisconsin, though, it kind of showed a civic block again, and then mimicking its times with ample parking, and taking out some of those buildings. But overall, again, visionary plans, good ideas, others not so much. And those ideas that weren't so much obviously stayed within a plan and not as an implemented item. The 77 plan really opened the door for the marina, this crazy, wacky idea that there should be a marina on ports downtown. And, doing research on this, into writing it and doing research on the plan, I'm not from here. I didn't realize that the marina itself, prior to it getting built, was pretty controversial. There was a referendum, I think.
Bob?
Yeah.
We still don't like to talk about it.
Okay. Number of
I'm
alders
kidding. Go ahead.
turned out. Yeah. So and now here we are, 40 years later, and it's really highlights, and it's really one of the faces and the jewels of the city. And in 1998, we used plan amendments to really make course corrections sometimes. This was the part where, and I mentioned this in an earlier workshop at Plan Commission, for much of the 60s and the 70s and into the 80s, 85-foot height buildings downtown were a matter of right, meaning no rezoning, no special exceptions, no special Plan Commission approvals. And so it was this plan that kind of led to a zoning ordinance change to, look at lowering heights, in the heart of downtown. So there's good ideas that come out of these plans, and sometimes the visions or these ideas that, maybe weren't considered so much, they stay there. So I just want to reiterate that point. And that 98 plan, I think that was really the last downtown plan action. But since then, obviously we all know there's been a number of changes in the last 25 years. The Lighthouse condominiums, no particular chronological order, Newport Shores, the townhomes and the condos just north of Washington Street, the sale of the North Slip we were just discussing previously, the former Piggly Wiggly site that was the grocery store just south on Washington, just north of what I call the Dockside Deli building. Now it's grass, but that was, a kind of a clunker for a number of years. The Harbor Lights building, Franklin Street streetscaping, the West Slip of it, major impactful projects, in the last 25 years. And then we'll see, and what we probably all know, there's change coming in the years ahead at some point or another. It's just the way downtowns are. They change sometimes a little, sometimes a lot. And so, and this is kind of the key slide what the mayor was referring to and what this plan is. And that slide on the left, believe that's really page 1. And it kind of lays out, the broad idea of the plan. It says, sometimes these plans, they tend to be interpreted literally, and that's not the intent. Really, these intents are to inspire, and that's to provide a vision and a range of possibilities of what could occur in our downtown, provided that that's backed up with a good faith effort of gathering public input and using that public input to come out with these ideas. Identify goals and opportunities in the path to follow for those projects or those ideas, should the city and the community want to pursue them. And, it's an inform and guide zoning, land use, and policy decisions to achieve those goals. Is it backed up by a plan? And discourage. Sometimes these plans say that they have the ability to discourage. It says if there's a site that we probably think is going to redevelop and there's a higher best use outlined in this plan, it discourages an undesirable use would it come. And that kind of goes back to the bullet points here. So what is these little high identify, inform, discourage, what does it mean? Well, in the end, the plan is this. Change happens, so let's try to have a plan in place and try to be active rather than reactive. It is a long-term vision. There's ideas in this plan to consider, long-term horizon, 10 years or more. In 1962, that marina was proposed. 20 years later, I think it was when the shovel went into the ground. And so these are visions that may not seem realistic or feasible today, but who's to say if it's a good idea and it has lasting power, that some of these ideas, those in the community, those sitting up on this dais may consider that 20 years from now. And, consistency is what the plan we want to make zoning and land use decisions. And zoning and land use decisions in state law, they have to be consistent with a plan in place. And so that's what I refer to as identify a highest and best use in the front. And so we can be proactive and not say a less desired use is not consistent with the plan. And it's flexible. Plans are not stone tablets. Not every idea in a plan works out. Maybe sometimes they're not good ideas at all. But sometimes a better offer comes along. It's hard to predict 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And plans can and are often changed. There's amendments to a plan, and that's a very typical process that we see communities throughout the state. And that's all through the public approval process, very similar to a rezoning. It's noticed, there's a public hearing, there's public input. And so there is flexibility worked into the plan for decisions or dynamics, macroeconomics, the market changes that none of us can foresee. And so what was that public planning process? Well, as I mentioned, it was a little over a year. Coming up on June is about a year and a half. And it started with these typical phases of a plan process. There's a project initiation. There's an analysis where we hire a consultant and they are analyzing, what makes, the dynamics and important parts and facets of the plan area in the city. And then we go into the largest part of the plan is community input. And I think, Wayne, that's you might be you in the center there with that blue shirt on. Anyway, he's talking to Dennis. And this was where we had one-on-one, the consultants had one-on-one interviews, and there were a number of focus groups of different stakeholder groups, and also a community-wide survey that really had almost 350 replies. And I was going to bring it up, but in the end, I was really impressed with that community survey. I want to just take a minute to highlight. And it was probably the best survey that I've ever participated in a planning process, solely because of the earnestness and just the quality of answers to those survey questions. And the survey was set up to be like almost like an interview with the community. If you weren't able to be, or we couldn't interview everyone. And so this was not like a choice A, B, C, or D. It was focused for open-ended questions and answers, almost like an interview. And I was just very impressed, with across the board with the number of respondents and and the meaningful, thoughtful answers they had. So I just really wanted to highlight that. And then lastly, we had coming into the rounding third and putting the plan together, there were two public meetings during the course of the plan process, and finally we had an open house earlier. And then here we are and looking at a plan commission and council considering making a recommendation to approve. So it was, it was a good chunk of time, and we tried to be as thoughtful as we could. And then there's that community survey I mentioned. I have the little red squiggly. I just want to call this out, and because I think we tried to make the plan reflect this. And then what kind of plan should this downtown plan be? And in the end, it almost 70% said, it should have a mix of short range, low hanging fruit type of things that maybe the city we can do. But in the end, it should also have some type of visionary ideas. And so I think the plan itself, in the end, tried to do that, and I think it did. And so let's take a little nickel tour of the plan summary. And then when I did that, I just wanted to point out that the consulting team we hired, they're called Grafe and Kubala Washako. So Grafe is more of a planning, engineering, and a little bit of our design firm, and then Kubala it's a Cedarburg-based architecture firm. And they identified 5 key issues in this port downtown. Obviously, the marina and the waterfront. I think that speaks to itself. The other one is downtown district and placemaking. And what they mean by those arrows is that downtown is not just Franklin Street. I think we kind of are still blessed with this grid. And the idea is to take that vibrancy and that activity and the interest on Franklin and start pulling it more throughout our grid of downtown, particularly on Grand Avenue, and particularly maybe on one or two other of these east-west streets. And so we have this whole district of downtown and not just Franklin Street. The idea is to generate activity throughout a good part of downtown. The other one is residential and commercial. Right now, before zoning in downtown does not allow for just standalone single, 2-family residential. Apartments, yeah. Residential over commercial, of course, downtown. But I think there's areas where there's a place for residential in downtown, and start maybe getting a little more density, and maybe taking that zoning code and looking to see if that can be opened up a bit and allow for a little more residential. So they're trying to get a little more residential and commercial mix. For Cold Dock Park, again, much like the marina, much like the lake, it kind of speaks to itself, given the location and just the size of it, and the ability, or just what it could be. And then lastly, this is almost like undergirding almost everything. And as one of the plan consultants said, who's been around the block a number of times, he's been doing these throughout the state, he's never met a community that said they didn't have a parking problem. And so that's just a reality of the plan, and it's a real reality. And so that's addressed as well. And so taking those 5 issues, I don't want to get too complicated, but really they looked at 3 ways to address these issues: urban design, circulation and parking, and then redevelopment ideas. So urban design, the idea is they took a kind of a mini plan and broke it down by districts. And the idea, and what the consultants were really pushing for is for where can we have those areas of downtown where it should have an active pedestrian realm. The ground floors should be more active uses rather than professional services or offices, which could go upstairs, and kind of emphasize the need for, retail, food and beverage, more what are considered more activity-generating uses. And that's what the little blue lines on these blocks are. And then it looks at areas where we can have improved streetscaping. We can have the suggested ideas for gathering places or places of interest, and also kind of these kind of gateway markers, be it improve intersections. And then secondly, as Commissioner Knoop alluded to earlier, there's a design guidelines, as almost acting, it's an appendix to the thing. And what that is it provides like design examples that might be appropriate for downtown and kind of gives some basic architecture, to downtown right now. Or I should just say, components of architecture that would work downtown that we should be aware of when there's new buildings or redevelopment. And so it's kind of like something, we don't have that in our zoning code right now. Our zoning code does not have any design components to it. And so this actually provides myself or the city, when there's a new development, is there a palette of architecture that could work downtown versus could not work downtown. And so this is just providing us with really what it is just something to hang our hat on and just a kind of a palette to go off of. Parking and circulation. And really, it's not just parking, and it's not just circulation. It's more of the right-of-ways and connections and getting around downtown. And it kind of just sums it up with, can some streets look better, function better, and be safer? There was a desire for this plan to look at pedestrian, bike, and safety downtown on our streets. And so one idea is taking, in this case, East Main Street, between Wisconsin and down to Franklin, and making it more of a festival street, kind of a shared use street. This is the street where we see farmers markets and the other festivals. And this is it's very popular in Europe. The term for these is Wooners, which means shared street in Dutch. And they're essentially just plaza streets or festival streets, as I call them. And so that's where we can have a curbless street decorated, and it's just kind of a multifunctional street. Yes, it's still a street, but it's also, kind of a finer grain urban design component to make the street more attractive, a little more active, and kind of that add vibrancy to downtown. And we kind of see it like, I think that's Halifax up on the top picture, and I'm going to guess Cleveland in the bottom. Just an example. And Grand Avenue, I mentioned, the downtown plan. One goal is to, take Franklin Street, take that energy, take that attention, take that vibrancy, and pull it around the corner down Grand Avenue. And the idea here is to take Grand Avenue and make the dimensions a little more like Franklin Street. And doing so is kind of, it has at least two different ways of advantages. One is you kind of even out those slopes of those sidewalks, so we're not having those ankle breakers that we see in parts of Grand Avenue. And also it provides a little more opportunity for terraces or even wider sidewalks, and making it a little more comfortable for dining. And then we're also looking at wayfinding signage and possibly, if there's an opportunity, improved intersections that make it look, again, urban design, appearances are better, but also making it in such a way where when you enter downtown, traffic slows down because you're kind of entering, this area where it's a little more strolling, a little more slower paced. And then the wayfinding, and this kind of goes between urban design of making a more attractive signage and parking. In a number of the discussions, I remember one focus group where, the consensus was, or the popular opinion was, we have plenty of parking. It's just that if you're a visitor to downtown, you really don't know where that parking is a block or two west of Franklin. And so using the idea of decorative wayfinding. And then moving along, there's other more, either some safety and just bike considerations. You know, the consultants came up, you know, the interurban is just near down by Chestnut. And of course, it's just hooks back up on Jackson. And what we heard and what they heard was it just kind of disappears when you hit downtown. So why not have that protected bike lane option, you know, to be that missing link between the two segments? And one reason I like that, I'm not a biker. I would if I had a protected bike lane. And I mentioned this where, you know, e-bikes are becoming, they might be a thing to stay. I don't think they're a fad. And I see more and more of them. And so if there's more people like me that want to bike and see a protected bike lane, I think it just promotes, it promotes biking and makes downtown a little more enjoyable. So that's the idea of, hey, if we could have a protected bike lane downtown, where could it be? Well, that's what it could be up on Wisconsin, given their look at the right-of-way. And then there is this idea of mini roundabouts or compact roundabouts. And it's just, you know, you can get trailers and boat trailers and semis over it. It's just kind of not a plateau, but a rounded plateau. And again, just another means to slow traffic down. Whether the city or downtown want to take up on this idea, again, that's to be determined. That's up to them. But again, this is an idea to be considered. And then parking. There was a parking analysis done, and I think that's going to be rolling out as just a present what was the findings of it, not necessarily part of this plan, but I think it's coming pretty soon. It's going to be finished. But the idea was there's two ways to look at, you know, this. You know, they did a pretty good parking analysis, and what they found was really not too surprising, what we've probably heard in the past. One of the biggest issues was long-term parkers parking up the popular or the high occupancy parking areas, you know, on Franklin, close to Main, or behind the Duluth building. And oftentimes, or, you know, these were just 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, sometimes employees. And so here's an option, perhaps use an outside vendor and just kind of use pricing and just kind of supply and demand and try to force, encourage, promote, and to spread parking around and start freeing up those high occupancy areas for more short-term shoppers and diners. The other one was just they looked at, you know, the idea of parking garages if it ever got to that point somewhere down the line. And so they looked at what could be locations for parking structures involved, you know, conjoined with any future developments. Or there's also just the more traditional, the little more low-hanging fruit about just better wayfinding and the idea of having like either a shuttle or some type of bus or some type of marina shuttle for to pick up, drop off, and just those ideas. And so that was looking at parking, and maybe just it's not a supply issue, maybe it's a management and organization issue to begin with. And then finally, redevelopment. As I mentioned, you know, there's sites that we probably know are going to be redeveloped. And so perhaps why don't we just, you know, have some ideas of what it could be, not necessarily what it will be, but perhaps using the expertise of our consultants. And maybe there's just some really good ideas that we could take from these these aspirational images that they put together. And so this is what the police and fire block. I know Mayor Knightsky, you know, mentioned, you know, if there's a new fire or police station, and if it's such where it does move, I don't know if it will or not, and it frees up a block of downtown. And so a recommended, you know, use would be just nice in scale townhomes or these types of side-by-side residential development with, all the entrance and parking is in the back. And so you kind of have this nice scale of residential on that block should that happen. The Jade, I call it the Jade Air site, and it's been kind of looked at for a long time. I came across a plan, even a old TIF plan, and it's no secret that this has been considered parking if that industrial site, just kind of moves somewhere else, or just there's an desire to make this a redevelopment site. And so this is just kind of a concept that they put together. And they kind of gave us two ideas. One, if that existing, that industrial building is something that could be reused or remodified in like a market hall or something. That's what this image or this concept depicts. But the other idea is to incorporate, there's room for like townhome type residential and near Wisconsin and Grand. Perhaps some of that underutilized buildings could be something a little more substantial given the West Slip idea. And perhaps that could even be a civic site with residential above should the library ever move. Again, it's just planning, it's conceptual plans for something that might occur, but we don't know. But why not sketch out a vision of what this could be? And here's that idea if there's been a larger, little more dense apartment back down there, and again, with the townhomes. But in either instance, they have this idea of a open green area and connections across the creek. And again, something resembling massing of the West Slip and some residential over commercial or even a civic use. And mention the Piggly Wiggly site. Well, or in this case, they decided to really look at the whole site in its entirety. Now, is this gonna, this is all, and in the end, it's all up to the property owner, and maybe this happens 20 years from now, 10 or not, and that's fine. But what I like about this is that this gives us some nice design ideas of trying to utilize the alleyways and alleyways all the way through, so you're connecting visually the water all the way out to Wisconsin Street. So you kind of have these blue vista points throughout your downtown. And that's what that's showing. If there could be, what if that whole building is just redesigned someday? And that's just some idea consideration that they want to look at. But again, this would, the uses here are similar to what's there. What's downtown? It's mixed use. And so it's just a nice little design consideration that, we looked at. And then kind of the long range stuff, kind of and you've probably read, you may have read this in the paper or just seen that at the previous meetings. And what if there's an opportunity someday to kind of extend the breakwaters and start having a little more programming and additional slips and grow that marina? And this is just some ideas that they're inserting here about a teaching basin or a children's or a beginner's area of the marina. Or the other one is, what if they want to go the whole range and take a look at, freeing up, if it gets congested, why not, look at taking a slip, just what's this idea, take a second slip and put it on Cold Dock. And as I've learned, Port is one of the few marinas on Lake Michigan that has both the charters and the fishing going out of one slip. I guess this arrangement is a little more common, and all of a sudden you kind of have a little more breathing room and a little more room to work with, and still honoring that Hitchcock plan that was put together. And so that's kind of the big idea that they came up with. And that's kind of the summary of the plan, without droning on too long. And so what's next? Well, this is a plan that is a public improvement or public input every step of the way. So we had, following that open house that we had in May, we had a little public comment period prior to and afterwards. And here we are at May 18th. And then should the Plan Commission recommend the council approve the plan, there's a required 30-day review period between now and when the council would take this up. And then lastly, I put in plan implementation and TBD, because I just want to reiterate the point, what are the priorities of this plan? There's a lot of ideas. There's a lot of things to consider in this plan. Prioritize and take up what's important, which ones do we want to go and start a direction in achieving. And TBD, that's up to the council, the commission, the community at large. And so that's what I want to kind of get across. But the idea is, but let's put together a plan and envision some ideas first. And if you haven't seen it already, it is on our plan website. Both it's under departments and my planning department webpage, but it's also on the front page. And that's all I have.
Bob, I have a couple of questions for you related to what is left of our industrial zone parts of Port Washington, because they don't really seem to be addressed, other than the Jade Air piece. Was there any conversation or discussions about the future of the power plant? If that is not a forever piece.
No, there really weren't. They, We Energies, the consultants spoke to them, but there is mention of like a waterway course, like between the new proposed nature preserve at Cedar Gorge, and what if there was like a water trail, going from there all the way up past South Beach, and then they have an idea of if this could have a trail going up around that We Energies land, just south directly of the plant and hooking up to the network in downtown. But We Energies plant itself, no.
And the reason I ask is when you first started out and you showed those different timeline sketches, 1998, it struck me that
I'll go to that real quick.
in 1962, if you would have shown that same slide doing a look back, that would have been 1901. So it just makes me wonder as we move forward, like what vision we want to strike for some areas that that weren't discussed. But otherwise, I really appreciated it. So if you were to take that slide and then reverse it from 1962 to today, that thing would slide back into the 18th, or not the 18th, the 19th century.
Kind of wild when you put it that way, yes.
Yeah, well, that's how I think. And when I think about it, if I could go back in a time machine, there's several things I would, if I were the mayor in 1901, I'd been like, there's no way we're doing any more industrial development on the lakefront, and doing some foreshadowing there. So I'll bring it up at council as well. It's not a shot at We Energies, but if that building were ever to do something different, it would be nice to have a vision casted for what we would like to see there, which would be a clear opening to the lakefront. So I appreciate that. I have other comments, but I'll open it up to the commission. Questions or comments? I know many of you participated in the process as well. Mr. Knoop?
Bob, I reviewed both documents. I have a number of markups in the urban design guidelines that I think would be best just to share offline rather than take up time at this meeting, but that would be it.
Very good.
Others? Mr. Mock?
Yeah, I guess first I want to thank the community and Bob and everybody for obviously all the time and effort that's gone into this. Overall, I think it's really good. I mean, I went through it and I made notes, and there's 6, 7 different things I disagree with, kind of the look at, but the thoughts and ideas behind them are all very solid. So, and I think that's kind of goes back to Bob's point. This is not like a concrete document. These are ideas and suggestions that, if we decide to move forward, for example, with Main Street redo, we all probably have different ideas, but the concept of doing something there, I think, is a very solid idea. So,
Excellent. Others? Mr. Ehrlich?
I think overall, I I mean, I agree. I think there's some really cool ideas, things I never even thought of. But it kind of started to rejuvenate some of my excitement of what are the possibilities. I think they did a really nice job. And I'm hoping this thing, it moves forward to plant the seeds of some really cool things to the downtown.
Awesome. Others? Schumacher, anything to add?
Yeah, I appreciate all the effort that went into it. The Jade Air property is what really caught my eye. That's a very underused and undervalued piece of property that would really add to our downtown once developed. It's unfortunately, or not unfortunately, it's up to the private property owner whether they want to move on with their property. I'm not sure how much that business is used anymore, but it would sure be an addition to the city if we could do that. I also, as a bicyclist, I agree with, we do not mark our bike trail very well. I've heard that from people who've come to town. They don't know where it goes, especially if they're not familiar from Port. They're just riding around in circles. I mean, that's something, the interurban trail is an asset for the county, Sheboygan County. I mean, we draw a lot of people, and it would be a benefit to our businesses to mark that better. It's something we could do in the immediate concern.
Agreed.
Thank you.
It's kind of a rite of passage for a kid in Port Washington to go down St. Mary's Hill into the door of an Oldsmobile 88. Mr. Knope?
Yeah, I just want to express my agreement with all of the commissioners here in this document, and the time and effort and the participation by all of the residents. And I've participated in a number of these, facilitated a number of these, and in reviewing that document, it is clear that a lot of voices were able to be included as part of this. And I think it is it captures a lot of that voice and interest that is here for the city. What I'm really excited about is the fact that we now have this as an additional tool to our zoning ordinances. So when we do get development coming in, we can say, okay, one, does it comply with the zoning that we currently have here? And then two, let's put it against that plan, and is this really the best use for this space? And we have that discretion to make that call at that time when those opportunities come up. But prior to this document, we didn't have that. So it's like, well, that sounds good. Sure, why not? We're happy somebody wants to take us to the dance tonight. So I feel like this will help us be a little bit more deliberate in our development downtown. So thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to kind of close out here before we make a motion, and that's that. I think this gives us a very clear vision of what we want to do. I think Port Washington has, for too long, to use Kyle's analogy there, we've danced to the beat of the developers, and now this is a very clear, clean line. And I just want to give some assurances, because I've gotten a lot of notes about this that, you know, personally, I'm not going to sign any developer agreement moving forward that doesn't include a parking solution, that asks for anything to exceed heights. I'm not going to sign any developer agreements that don't include timelines, so that if there's delays, that future councils can, shift those developer agreements if the conditions change. And again, I'm forward-looking, but what I really like about it is this just puts us in a viable position for our infrastructure moving forward. And again, like the conversations about heights, just assurances that, as we scale from the lake moving west, the height variances will go up as we move west. But in our historic downtown, like the renderings that Mr. Knope had brought, that we maintain those clear lines of sight and allow for that type of development. But we need to work tirelessly to maintain the downtown as is, because that is what is our draw. And last, just so that the Planning Commission understands, in the next months, we're going to be coming to talk about the north and south side of Port Washington development. What is our vision for infrastructural improvements, et cetera, because that's where the city really has an opportunity to kind of meet some of the significant needs We don't have a housing stock. We've got an inability to attract young professionals to move to Port Washington. And we need density and we need development in residential pieces as well. So my hope is that the amount of the time and effort that went into the downtown plan, we can match on the north and south side of town as well, so that we can build up an infrastructure to ensure that our downtown can be viable for the long term. It's always disappointing when you're little and the donut shop comes in and out with great frequency, and now I think we've got the ability to build some consistency there in a different tax base. So with that, I would move to accept the recommendation for the downtown plan to move on to council.
I'll second.
It's seconded by Mr. Newmeyer. All right, any questions or concerns on the motion? Mr. Harris, nice job. Thanks for bringing our community together. All in favor signify
Thank
by
you.
saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right. With that, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Newmeyer, seconded by Commissioner Ehrlich. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned. Go Pirates.